Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And this GM has to deal with polymorphing problematic players. What's he gonna do?
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
You know, recently we've seen videos, we've heard people talk about this huge problem with polymorph. And they're very, DMs are really struggling with this. They're having a hard time, but I think the biggest problem is they just use the spell wrong.
So is this where the players are polymorphing the bad guys into, little furry creatures and capturing them?
No, that wouldn't be so bad. Either a wizard or a druid or whatever is polymorphing, or they're polymorphing other members of the party.
So here we have the example presented to us. A party of a ranger, rogue, druid, and wizard, 7th level. They're casting polymorph on the one casted on the ranger, one casted on the rogue, and they turn them into giant apes. And the giant apes are wrecking the dungeons.
Right. So, here's the thing, right? In my own game, I have a sorcerer who's like, hey, I can twin polymorph and turn my gobelos into T-Rexes. And when we brought it up to the player of one of the gobelos, a goblin ranger, right? He's like, if you ask my character, he'll be like, fuck yeah, I want to be a T-Rex. But if you ask me, Anthony, the player, I'm like, no, I don't want to be a T-Rex because I do way more damage and I hit way harder as a character than I will as a T-Rex. You have way more abilities as a character than you do as a polymorph creature. Now, some of the things that they brought up is like, which seemed really odd to me. Like, one, I've seen this happen time and time again, and like they're like, it's an hour, right? So they talk about it like that's a long time to explore a dungeon. Like, you're going to be polymorphed the whole time as an ape exploring the dungeon. I'm like, how freaking big are the hallways, for one? That's one of the things that I immediately think about. And two is like, how big are your dungeons? What do you like? There's no puzzles. There's no. Like, I come from really old school where, like, you go into the dungeon, you might be there for a couple of days, right?
Well, we haven't done the dungeon that's taken a couple of days in a while. Now, long hallways that take a half hour, totally feasible. Areas where, as you brought up, a giant ape just is not going to fit. Giant ape, is that large or is that huge?
That's huge.
That's huge.
T-Rex is also huge.
T-Rex, that's what he ends with. Soon they're going to be level 8, and they're going to be casting 2 polymorphs a day, and they're going to have access to the giant T-Rex.
Have you seen the movie Meet the Robinsons?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just envisioning when they do become T-Rexes, is the bad guy's going in the corner, and the T-Rex with his head stuck up against the wall going, this plan wasn't thought out very well. I have a very large head and little hands. That's the kind of stuff that should happen that you need to fix. And looking at this polymorph spell, you only retain your alignment and your personality. So your mentals are the animals, right? Mm-hmm. Giant ape isn't too bad. Like, that's actually a good one. Like, literally in the Saber Dice game, when Jogo turned into a giant ape, he really wasn't that much dumber. the modifier changed by 1, right? So it's not a big deal. But technically, and in that game, the DM let me use rage, right? But technically, I don't think you can use those abilities. I don't think you can access anything from your character class when you're polymorphed.
Correct.
You can only use the statistics for the animal. So the only thing this really does give you, in the case like the giant ape and the T-Rex, it might give you some really cool attacks, and you're going to have really beefed and bumped hit points, because when you come back out, you're going to have your hit points. So like those, and that way it's really super useful. But you're not really going to be as effective as you would be being a character. You have way more things you can do. You can generally, you're probably going to do more damage. And also, even to do this, like you're talking about 2 characters using 4th level spell slots as well. So, they're only like 7th, they're like 7th, 8th level. So that's a significant resource.
Right. So a couple things to mitigate the situation. Number 1, polymorph is a concentration spell, so you can damage the casters and force them to make concentration checks. Now, in the example that we have here, the players are intelligent and they're hiding and avoiding combat. So this is where you enter in things that are area of effect. If we have animals exploring a dungeon, Well, I'm fairly certain it's pretty easy to go ahead and throw some fireball traps in there every so often, or poisonous cloud traps. Those things are going to be great and force saving throws on the party or on the players. It's also going to give them damage, which will force the concentration checks.
Now, an addendum to that is make your players roleplay that intelligence. You know, with the ape, yeah, you're a little bit smarter, but still 6 is pretty dim-witted. You get to the T-Rex, that is animal intelligence, and literally you are a big, stupid animal, and that's how you should be playing. You cannot do complex. You're not going to be able to do complex plans or strategies. You just try and bite things pretty much, and probably teamwork isn't going to be happening at all. You're more than likely you're probably just going to attack the last thing that attacks you, or the thing that maybe even just looks the tastiest.
And that's that's an element to go into as well. So damage your casters, force the players to actually role play and do what the rules actually say with that spell. Add in time lapses, add in challenges that require thinking. So all right, you use this spell, well, you're only going to be able to use it once, in a dungeon. Areas that they can't get into unless they're humanoid. You can't pause the spell, change back, and then switch unless you cast it again, and that's not going to be easy. Put in casters, put in someone who's got the spell magic, put in magical things that are going to counter tactic what the players are actually wind up doing.
Put in a caster that has control animal spell. It has the ability to charm an animal, right? Like, granted, it'll be your casters can dispel the spell and turn them back, but it makes them use the resource. So that is another way of doing it as well. So this is to me, this is a non-issue. It's fun. I let my players do it. I don't care. Out in the open, they're going to be able to use the full, extent of it. But once you go indoors, there's going to be a lot of places where the really tough monsters or animals that you would want to change into, they just aren't going to fit.
The last thing that I wanted to touch on was the DM is planning the encounters for the party level. And that's all well and good. And he's worried because no assortment of monsters is an adequate challenge given the way he's playing and the players are playing to be able to deal with two seventh level characters and two challenge 7 monsters. So you need to beef up your encounters. If they're trashing what's there, put in harder stuff. If you need to slowly increment, put in waves 2, 3, 4 to see what can they wind up handling so that it's properly challenging. Put in ambush monsters that are, waiting behind so that they can ambush the back line, not the front. You use things that are going to be more intelligent. The party's tactics. You have the ability to literally outthink them because you can add things that need to be there when they need to be there.
Yeah, the other thing too is if they're actually being seen casting spells, you could have enemy spellcasters use counter spell, things like that as well. So there's definitely ways around this. This is, like I said, this is a non-issue. It's not a big deal, and even when the challenge system in 5e, I only loosely use it anyway. Like, I look at it, I get the numbers, and then what I do is go, well, what can my players really do? And I go, oh, they like to turn into big apes a lot of times. Well, they can take a lot more damage now. They can,
All right, Tarrasque it is.
well, maybe. But no, why not? I look at the capabilities of my players. I go, how much damage can they do? How much damage can they absorb? Well, from both ends. Is this going to one-shot one of my weaker players, even though it says it's appropriate challenge? Or I go the other way and go, how many of these monsters are actually going to survive the first round with my players? And I design my encounters around that.
I hope this offers enough points, enough ways to help mitigate this situation. As Dave says, polymorph's not as dangerous as some people are claiming it is. It's all about how you handle the encounters, how you handle the setup. Are they in a dungeon where They're going to need to be able to use it over and over again. Can they use it over and over again? Are you handling things in waves? Do you have casters to counteract what's going on? There's all different ways to do it. So let me know how you're doing it in your game. How are you handling it in your game? Down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can always Patreonize us over on Patreon in a good way.
So until next time, stay nerdy.